Hey guys, welcome to the Real Appreciation Podcast. I am your host of the show, David Clair-Bennett, and today's guest that I have with me is someone I'm honored to call a longtime friend, someone I'm honored to say has traumatized me in a weird way, and I'm sure many of you guys as well with his infamous creation of a little movie I'm sure you've heard of called Final Destination, which, speaking of, Final Destination Bloodlines, the highly anticipated sequel, finally releases in theaters everywhere and IMAX May 16th, so please, without further ado, welcome to the show, Jeffrey Reddick. Jeffrey, I can't thank you enough for being a part of this today. I hope you and your cats have been well since the last time we spoke.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. We're finally glad we got to do this, brother. Yeah, no, I'm doing well. My cats are doing well. And yeah, I'm just excited for the movie coming out. Excited to talk to you. I know we've been trying to do this forever, so we'll make sure it's not this long. Again, before we do the podcast talk, I know we talk, but the professional.
I'm so honored. Thank you again for being a part of it. Don't worry about how long it took. I'm just glad it's finally happening.
Finally.
Jeffrey, you've had an incredible 25 plus year career, but let's talk about the one scene that traumatized an entire generation. How does it feel knowing that you are the reason that people still panic when they see a log truck on the highway?
You know, it's funny. I always joke, like, I like to think that I probably saved lives instead of traumatizing people. So, like, maybe I should get an award or something for that, some just, I mean,
That's
but,
true.
no, honestly, just, as a horror fan, somebody who grew up loving these films, um, it's still really cool, like, to get these log truck memes, like, or trucks with anything stacked with stuff behind them. Um, like literally to see that be part of the public zeitgeist is just an honor for me as a fan. Like, I just came up this, the little teenage Jeffrey, growing up in a trailer in Kentucky watching these movies and dreaming about doing them. And so, um, you know, obviously it takes a whole team to make a movie. So, I have to always give credit to, uh, the writers and director, James Wong and Glenn Morgan on the first one, J. Mackie Gruber, and Eric Bress, and our amazing director, David Ellis, who was a stunt person. So no matter what, you know, was on the page as far as how that truck scene would play out, we knew that he would like take it to the next level, which he did. Like, um, it was all done like real life, except for the logs falling off the truck because the logs bounce like that. They just kind of fall. So they had to CGI the bouncing logs, but like that scene was done practically, and it's actually one of my favorite openings. I always say in the top 10. I don't want to sound like a douche and say it's in the top five. I think it's in the top 10 of my favorite horror openings of just horror movies in general. So, and I also say Kentucky, because I was driving home to Kentucky and got behind a log truck because originally the opening was going to be a hotel fire. The kids were going down to spring break and they stopped at a hotel and the hotel caught on fire. And, my producer had two great producers, or three, Craig Perry, his partner Sheila, and Warren Zide. And they were just like, yeah, maybe if we could just think of something, the hotel fire's cool, but if there's something that, just cooler. And I was driving home to Kentucky to visit the family, and I got behind a log truck and I pulled over, and then the lightning bolt struck, and I pulled off the freeway, and yeah, the rest is history, as they say. So.
As they say, indeed. And with the upcoming release of the next chapter in the Final Destination franchise, what do you think the fans should be the most excited about now?
Well, first of all, they should be excited. It's been so, I mean, I've been waiting for so long, along with everybody else. So I'm glad that we're finally getting another one. And I will say they've got such an amazing team together to do this. Like the thing that makes me proud about this franchise, even though it has taken so long to get another one, it's never been like a cash grab. Like they could have cranked these out like every other year, or every year, and just for the money, and they don't do that. So there was just a lot of care, like from the whole, like the writers, the director. Like I spoke to them before they started, and there was such they're such fans. So to have like fans really working on it, I think that um, just know you're in really good hands. Like I mean, I've seen it. I read the script. It's a great story. I mean, you've seen the trailers out, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but they've come out it with this kind of Bloodlines angle, which I think is just a very sharp, clean, interesting angle to go at. Whereas all the other films were we did have groups of people that knew each other, but this is like family, so it's more personal. Um, Tony Todd, is a dear friend of mine and such a key part to this franchise and so many other films. I mean, he has such a huge legacy that will never be forgotten. But we were so blessed to get him, back and have him be in this film. So the fans will kind of get to see his last performance. Um, and the movie's just really fun. It's a really it just everything that you want from a Final Destination movie. It like delivers and then kind of goes like a step up.
Can't wait to see it either, just like everyone else. But you were just talking about our dear friend Tony Todd, and I want to take this time to acknowledge a dear friend of both of us who is such a pivotal part of not just the Final Destination franchise, but horror movies and film in general. And you and I both loved him so deeply, that being the late great Tony Todd, as we were talking about right now on the Real Appreciation podcast. And he makes his final appearance in the upcoming Final Destination Bloodlines film, and I'm so glad to see him one last time. And we both just take a moment to remember how amazing of a man Tony Todd was, not just on screen, but as you and I both know personally, even more so off screen.
I loved him. I mean, Candyman was such an impact on me. So as an actor, like, seeing his body of work even before, we got him in Final Destination, I was already a big fan. But then when I got to know him, he was such a giving, like, warm, smart person who really loved his craft. Like, that's the thing is like, I've met, I haven't met, I shouldn't, I've met a lot of great actors and actresses in my career, but he did this one man play that was about the first African American like welterweight boxing champion, and I went to see it. It was like a 90-minute one man show, just him, like 90 minutes, going from like just all over the you know his this guy's life, the emotional ups and downs, going from sadness to rage. It just blew everybody away that saw it. And I go up to him after the show and I was like almost crying. I was like, man, that was amazing. He's like, yeah, but I messed up two lines. I'm like, dude, that's how serious he took his work. Like, he was human. Um, and he loved the fans so much. Like I think, I always appreciated the fans as well, but it's so nice to see like, actors and actresses who really understand that, like without fans, like we wouldn't have a career. And he was one of those people that was just so gracious with his time and so humble and so like cool but regal. It was like sitting in front of like a king or something when you were around him. Yeah, he was just an amazing person.
Rest in peace to the late, great Tony Todd. Jeffrey, Final Destination has always been about fate, legacy, and the things we leave behind. How do you think Bloodlines reflects that?
Well, I think, definitely it it's leans into the destiny and fate thing, because it deals with a family who's, you know, I'm not going to spoil anything that's not in the trailer, but if you haven't seen the trailer and you don't want to know anything about the movie, just cover your ears for a second. But no, but obviously these characters are impacted by the actions of the past. So, that's one of the great themes in any story is kind of like the sins of the parents, or in this case, the grandparents, um, are visited on future generations, even though, she didn't really commit any kind of sin.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it ties into that really cleanly with this story, which is what I love about it. John Watts, who did the Spider-Man Homecoming films, did the story, and Guy Busick and Laurie Evans Taylor wrote the screenplay from the Scream team. Um, so literally, and Adam Stein and Zach Lipinski are directing, and they did an amazing movie called Freaks, and did this amazing audition where they kind of filmed the audition. It was a Zoom like we're doing, but they filmed it. So they were pitching, it wasn't an audition, they were pitching their idea and they pre-recorded parts of it. And so while they were pitching, like weird stuff was like, this fell over and like some weird stuff started happening. And then the ceiling fan comes down and like decapitated one of them. So like I was like, that's amazing because I talked to the producer and he's like, these guys just get it. Like they get what a Final Destination film is. And I was like, yeah, but they're also setting a very high bar for people pitching going forward. But sorry, I got off track there a little bit. But yeah, I think, kind of fate and destiny is has always been a kind of the underlying theme of this. Kind of what I had always wanted the takeaway to be is that you can't cheat death, but you can you can learn to appreciate your life more and extend it. Um, and I still think that that's part of our film canon, like at the end of the first couple of films, not everybody dies.
Yeah.
Um, so, there were a couple where it's like, yeah, death just shows up and whacks him at the end anyway. But, I think that the idea that you can, and, again, that was a cool thing about the first one. Originally, it was going to be adult characters, and then Scream came out and they wanted to make them teenagers.
Yeah.
And I had no problem with that. Development process I was used to. So, but I think it is interesting to have especially when you go back to the first film, teenagers who, I remember when I was a teenager, you just think you're going to live to be forever and, life, you're invincible and bulletproof. And so it's very interesting to have kids start theming up their own mortality, and what they're doing with their lives. And what I love about, Final Destination is it's just, it's got these themes to it, but it's still just, instead of going super dark and heavy, with it, like there is a Hereditary version of this franchise that could be really super somber and heavy, but um, I think the fine line has always been like balancing like the seriousness with just the roller coaster, like fun aspect of it.
Absolutely, man. You talk about Final Destination really, truly, at the end all be all, being about appreciating life. And what better podcast to be on than Real Appreciation?
I
as,
didn't
the,
even plan that.
as the creator of Final Destination, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you could only pick one scene in particular, what would you say is your all time favorite kill scene so far out of all the Final Destination movies that we have seen?
That log truck scene, I mean, that's kind of a cheat because it's so many people die. That log truck scene though is the scene that I go to. Um, I always cheat on this because it's so hard because I will say um, there are two that get me in different ways. Like, and within the first one, the scene where Todd gets hung in the shower, surprisingly, always got under my skin. I think James Wong and Glenn Morgan did a great job, just writing that and directing it, and it was so real. Just the with the eyes, the muscles in the eyes bursting, like that one, like gets under my skin the most. Um, the gymnastics scene in the last film, the ending of the way that ends, it was the first time that I've actually like at an early screening of it, I jumped out of my like literally like went bah, um, so that one was the one that made me like really go. But I don't know. There's so many fun ones that I think that, but I think the gymnastic and the Todd scene from the first one, those are the two that kind of hit me. One because it just shocked me.
Yeah.
I love I love so many of them. A lot of them are in part two. I gotta say, like, poor Timmy getting smashed by the glass and Cat getting this spiked her hair and Rory. There's just like, yeah, um, yeah.
Amazing.
I gotta start. I gotta settle on an answer for that one because I keep cheating and going, well, this and this and this, but it's hard to
Well,
pick.
it is hard to pick because there's truly no wrong answer. But hey, when it's all said and done, what do you want your legacy to be?
Um, I want my honestly, what I want my legacy to be is kind of twofold because I did grow up in you know I'm not exaggerating, backwoods of Eastern Kentucky, in a trailer, um, and very poor, and through some dreaming big, which I think a lot of people, a lot of people have lost kind of there's a lot of hope that's been lost, and I even saw it when I was growing up. Again, when you're a poor area and it used to be coal country and the coal company like packed up and left, and it's like, you know, you're in a place where you're like, I don't know where to go with what I'm going to do with my life. I love where I'm at, but there's no job opportunities really, or they're kind of drying up, and it's like, um, so I want my legacy to be one of always keep hope and follow your dreams. Um, no matter where you're from, if you believe enough and you stay true to yourself enough, you can achieve them. And it just may take time, but you can achieve them. So I want kind of that because people kind of love the story about how I wrote Bob Shea, when I was like 14 and sent him a prequel and when I sent that off, I didn't have I'm a 14-year-old hillbilly. I didn't have any master plan about, oh, this will lead to this and this and this. It was just like, I loved A Nightmare on Elm Street, major props to Wes Craven as well. Um, and I just, I knew that working in Hollywood was what I wanted to do, and working in film and television is what I wanted to do. So I just sent this story off, and when he sent it back, I just sent it back. I'm like, look, buddy, I've seen three of your movies. I think you can take 5 minutes to read my story. And that just it was serendipitous because it was right before New Line blew up.
Yeah.
Um, so I probably, if 2 years later, he may not have responded. He may have, but um, it was through my pure passion and purity of motive, I think that kind of worked out. And so I think a legacy of kind of just hope for people who are anywhere, because I was, just the creator of Final Destination, like I'm the first gay person of color to create a horror franchise for a film studio.
Yeah.
Um, and so again, I think it's just a message of hope for anybody, no matter where you are in the world, or you know, yeah, that. And then also as a professional, I think a through line that you'll see, and I will say it's been to my detriment, but I've never screwed anybody over. Like I have always treated people with kindness and respect, and if there's an opportunity, I've often put other people's um, needs before mine, which is a kind of a cancer. It's part of my nature, unfortunately, that I have to do. But people everybody, and I'll use Craig Perry as an example because professionally, he's probably he's been the producer on these films, and I've worked with him, since I think 20 or 1996 is when I first entered the thing. But they were doing a retrospect, and he just said, that I'm like one of the kindest people that he's ever met, and that meant a lot to me. But it's not, it's that too. It's like, you can work in any industry. Hollywood's no different than any other business. There are going to be snakes and charlatans and backstabbing people, and you know, but there are good people out there, and you can always just be one of the good guys, and treat people well and treat them with respect. So, um, yeah, so that's more of a general legacy. Like, I Final Destination maybe some reference maybe carved on my tombstone, but I've got some more horror stuff that I'm working on right now that I'm really excited about too. So, but if this is my legacy, I've always said, just I always met that little kid in Kentucky dreaming of working in Hollywood, and so having the chance to have met pretty much all of my idols, that all my idols that were alive when I was growing up, like, I've got to at least meet them at conventions, work with several of them, made some wonderful friends. So, you know, I could die happy knowing that Final Destination is at least going to go down in the list of, like, great horror movies from the 2000s. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, it'll always be on the list. Um, and that's all I could ask for. And I'm so appreciative of fans and, people like you who have been so supportive over the decades, because it really makes.
Absolutely, man. I also want to say, if I may, real quick here. Um, Jeffrey, I appreciate you as a human being. Yes, we will always remember you as the creator of Final Destination, but I think what's even more important is to remember you as the human being behind Final Destination. It's always important to me to acknowledge the artist behind the art itself. And you and I come up with like a similar upbringing, poor family, small town. Nobody really believed in us. We were always the dream chasers. Still am. Here I am to this day. Here you are. Um, Amazing, man. And this is also a time to remind the world, to remind everybody watching or listening to this show right here between us right now, that no matter what obstacles are in your way, no matter who says you can't do something, fuck each and every one of those people, because the ones who can do something is you and I, Jeffrey, you and everybody listening to this. You guys have the power to make your dreams come true, and don't let any motherfucker ever tell you you can't, because that's absolutely true. Please forgive my language, but
But absolutely, I mean, that's the thing is, we live, the world's much different now, with the internet and social media, which, I thought was going to be a great tool to bring the world together, because I'm like, wow, people are going to be able to see, like, other people's lives and around the world, and realize we're all human beings and treat each other better. And I was like, well, called that one wrong. But um, it is like, you can achieve your dreams. And the thing is, the only thing that's worse than when I was growing up now is I just see that there are so many people on social media whose sole goal is to tear everybody down. And it's like, it's always somebody with, like, one, two followers, and, that post like a million times, and all their posts are like, this person sucks, and this person sucks, or you should die, or you did this and you should. And it's just, there's so much
yeah,
negativity out there that you really gotta be mindful. If you're doing pursuing your dreams now, is just don't you got to learn to cut that noise out, because I even get sucked into it. I read, my reviews, and it's kind of like, it's just a known thing that, like, people are more apt to review something negative. They're going to take the time to go online and post about it than if they love something. Um, and negativity kind of drives algorithms, because it keeps people riled up and it keeps
yeah,
them fighting and stuff. So that's the thing you got to look out for, is just don't, you got to tune out all that noise, and just, again, stay focused on what you want to do. Be mindful of who you surround yourselves with. Make sure you kind of keep good people and positive people in your life, and kind of learn to let the toxic people go. And,
yeah,
again, easier said than done when you're a people pleaser.
yeah.
But yeah, always, yeah, if I can, you hear this all the time from so many different people, but it's like, yeah, like, if a 14-year-old, like, kid from, Kentucky, with no connections to the film industry whatsoever, can do it, you can do it too.
Absolutely, man. As someone whose channel was completely targeted by a bunch of strangers, keep going. You guys are doing great, but I'm not giving up. But Jeffrey, before we get out of here, every day when I wake up and before I go to bed, I say three things aloud to myself that I'm grateful for. So with that being said, I want to flip the question on to you and ask you, what are three things that you are grateful for in your life right now?
I am grateful. Well, first of all, I'm very grateful for my faith, which has got me through a lot of hard times, and probably allowed me to stay as positive as I am. Well, not probably, has allowed me to stay as positive as I am, despite the really rocky roads of Hollywood. Um, I'm very thankful for my sobriety. Like, I quit drinking, about 16 years ago. And I'm very grateful for that. I never get on, like, a tirade about anything. What, I don't tell other people what to do with their lives. I just tell them like, if you're, because I didn't start drinking until I was 21. So I was in New York going out to clubs, having a great time, never drank. And then I went back to Kentucky and I was just bored. And I was like, well, let me just try this vodka thing. What's one shot going to do? And then it started. So I always just tell people like, if you're happy and comfortable in your own skin without any substances, there's no need to start adding them to your life, because once you start adding them, then you start relying on them, and it may not get to addiction stage, but you're at least relying on it to stay comfortable in your skin. And I've seen that take more people out in my life and in business than anything is drugs and alcohol. So I'm very grateful for my sobriety. And I'm grateful, well, I gotta, for my sister, my family, my family and fans. Like I put, those aren't on equal
Gotcha.
footing, obviously. Family first, but yeah, I would say, definitely my family. Um, and if it wasn't for sobriety, I couldn't be there for them.
I'm super proud of you, Jeffrey. Where can people find you online?
You can find me in that cesspool. I'm kidding. It's
Eh.
um, you can find me on, like, Jeffrey A. Reddick. So my name is, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and trying to learn the threads and all the other TikToks. There's just so much stuff. I'm usually on X, just because that's kind of where I have the most followers and people post the most news, and so I kind of update people there. But on Instagram as well. Yeah, so you can follow me there, and I'm always like, either if anything I've got new coming up, I'll post about it. But I'm always very just supportive of my friends, and like if I see like indie horror or indie stuff that is exciting, I always kind of post that stuff too, because I really want to support other artists. Um, so that's really important to me. So yeah, you can stalk me on the internet.
All right, stalk him on the internet everywhere, he just said. Jeffrey Reddick, thank you for giving us decades of fear and fate, and for making sure we stay the fuck away from log trucks. And to everyone watching, the newest installment of the Final Destination franchise, Final Destination Bloodlines, crashes back into theaters and IMAX everywhere May 16th. Death doesn't take days off, and neither should you.